Okay, so the last video we were talking about triads just going across the neck so we could get the basic root position shapes. I'm going to give you a bit of a crash course on the inversions. I'm not going to explain everything, but hopefully this will be enough to kind of get your foot in the door, and I'll show you a little bit of how you can kind of modify these to start putting it together. So let's start off with, let's say we're going to do C major. So let's say this is root, third, fifth, right? So this is fifth fret. So we got C. Now if I follow all these up here, if I go up, then I know that, okay, the root is 2 whole steps, so 1, 2, 3, 4 frets. There's the third. I know that the fifth is a minor third up from the third. 1, 2, 3. So we'll put the fifth there. And then the fifth is a fourth. These are intervals, so don't believe me, you can look it up, but I'm just going to kind of push through this so we can kind of get to the playing part. 8, sorry. Sometimes I put 8 root. All right, so these are different these are different inversions. This would be root position. Let me change so much red. Root. This would be first inversion. And I can't spell inversion. For someone who's trying to teach inversion, you'd think I'd be able to spell it. Version. All right. Second inversion. And, I have videos talking about chord inversions and stuff like that. So, I'll leave it to there or, you can always just look it up. But basically, root position, the root is the lowest note on a first inversion. The third note of that triad, in this case, it's an E. E is the third of a C chord, and that's the lowest note. G is the fifth of C major. So in that C major triad, we would call that a second inversion. So that's like some good practice right there, just to go, right? And that's like good practice right there. You can do that through different keys. Try it with maybe D major, right? Do G. I'm not writing these out, so but hopefully you can kind of rewind, and that's going to be the order of that, right? Third in the bass, fifth as the lowest note, root is the lowest note. So that's a good first step. And then, you could do it on different string sets. So let's see here. Let's see, can I zoom all the way out? I don't think it's going to let me, but I'll just have to do this piecemeal. So, all right, I'm going to take this guy and go over here. Now, this is kind of backwards compared to what we're doing, right? So when we go the other way, we have to lower it. Same deal here. So I'm going to go, let's say, I don't know, I think that's right. Yes, that should work. And then this shape. So remember, as it crosses back, we lower it. So now, if we're doing G, if you want to think of your cage patterns, this would be like G, or the D, G, and B string from E shape. So if I just play those 3 notes, there you go. There's your first inversion. There's your second inversion. So C, back to G. Right? I think starting out, sticking with just these string sets, I mean, obviously you can learn them in all the different string sets. Yeah. That was like D and A, the key of D and the key of A. That's cool, but I know this can kind of get, unless you're like really into this and you're probably wondering like, hey, what's a good starter pack? I'd say if you know these string sets and be able to connect those inversions, that is very powerful. And then, so let's say that's like your first step. You get those learned, and then if you want to start venturing into what we did in the other videos, you also know minor, diminished, and augmented. All you got to do is know how to alter these shapes. So like, let's say I wanted to turn these into minors. Well, then I'm going to flat the thirds. So I go from this to that. I go from this to that. I go from this right? So to give you a visual, I'm not going to put the flat in front of it. So, but you see, I would do this. See how I'm flatting the thirds? And then I could do the same thing over here, flat the third, flat the third. And now now we know all the inversions of minor. So check that out. So if I do C minor, if I do G minor, all right? And then, you know, just continue on. If you want to do diminished, I won't write these up, but just so you hear them. G diminished. If you wanted to do augmented, you would take a major triad and raise the fifth. And I'll show you that. That's kind of cool with augmented is a symmetrical shape. I don't know if this is help. Oh no. There we go. So we got, let me get the right tool here. All right, so oddly enough, I never thought of it that way, but if you take a minor shape and just lift the other two notes, that gives you augmented. Lift the, so, but maybe you're seeing that these shapes, all right, this one's a little tricky. Once you go augmented, the shape stays the same through all the inversions. That's kind of a cool thing. So if I go up 4 frets, another 4 frets, those are C augmented, G augmented. So the thing about augmented is they're all equally placed. So minor third or major third, major third, major third. So kind of like what we were talking about with the diminished seventh chord. If you watched that video, or maybe you heard that, where any note can be the root and augmented chord or diminished seventh. Diminished seventh is 4 notes, but they're all separated by the same interval. They're symmetrical. So minor third, minor third, minor third, minor third. So hence, any note of that could be the root. Same deal with augmented. Instead of minor thirds, these are major thirds. But they... So I could think of this as G augmented. I could think of this G augmented first inversion, G augmented second inversion. Or I could think of this G augmented, B augmented, D sharp augmented. A lot of that would have to do with how it's spelt on paper, and that gets more into like the theory side of stuff. I just want us kind of messing around with these shapes and kind of getting used to inversions. So, all right, so now that we've kind of talked about this, I'm going to jump back over to the melodic minor where we're talking about the triads of that. So maybe I'll see you over there, or maybe I'll see you somewhere else. All right, take care.